There you go.
Okay, that was great. I saw you dancing behind the scenes, so that was really good to see because it's very refreshing so early on Sunday morning. Good morning, Timothy, once again, and good morning to everybody watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, also Facebook, and to everybody listening to us in Clubhouse. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Timothy, it is, what's that? Oh, the date is February the 23rd. And we are in the 211th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One, and you just froze on screen. So I don't know what is going on. I hope that, oh yes, you're still there. Great, yes. Great, okay, so I'm not going to keep people waiting for the main events, your presentation of the main events. So could you please tell us what you're going to talk about today, what we're going to hear from you, and from there we'll jump into the thanks for our sponsors and also the body of this episode.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. I am reporting live from Katsuyama from the deck of the good ship Grimm's. Thank you very much for joining us. As Maya said, this is our 211th Sunday together consecutively, not missing a single beat, Maya. Today,
right.
February 23rd. How could you forget? It was February 23rd. It is the Emperor's birthday today. Thus, it's a national holiday that we get to celebrate tomorrow. Tomorrow is a day off nationally. So happy birthday to Your Excellency, Your Highness.
Yeah, happy birthday. Yes, indeed. And I apologize for my forgetfulness.
That's okay, Maya. We'll catch you another ones too. Anyway,
I know.
Anyway, we're still trying to figure out the Wi-Fi connection with, broadcasting without any interruptions, without any frozen frames. We're almost there. I've got my iPhone hoisted up to the top of my mast so that it can catch the Wi-Fi, and it is tethered to my laptop. So please forgive us. And also, you'll notice a little bit of the change in apparel. So people have told us, why don't you dress up a little bit more? Why don't you look a little bit more suave? Because you're giving a professional briefing. Well, it's kind of not really a professional briefing. This is what we do every Sunday to bring you up to date on what's going on with Japanese politics. We don't get paid for it. It is something that interrupts our daily life. Maya's feeding her family and trying to get ready for her Sunday. I'm almost always out on the waters. But it's a suggestion from a couple of our viewers. So we usually take those suggestions and play them out and see how they work. So if you have suggestions, besides, getting rid of the main speaker and inserting somebody else, we've gotten thousands of those. Please go ahead and contribute them. And in any event, as we go through this briefing, provide your comments and your questions to Maya, and we can talk about that as we get into the Q&A period. As I said, this is our 211th. We've got just days away from March, and in March things begin to change. The flowers begin to bloom. People's atmosphere and attitude change drastically, and pretty much we are moving quickly into spring. The yen closed out amazingly at $149.22 to the yen. That is amazing. We have been on a kind of dangling towards 160 for the last couple of months. Over the last couple of weeks, it's been playing with 150, and it hit 149 on Friday. That's a surprise, given all of the other things that are going on, the Trump tariffs, the increase in the inflation rate, the price of rice, the price of cabbage, things like that. So it is somewhat remarkable that the yen has hit such a high value, 149. It hasn't been there for many months. So it is something of great significance. The budget for the fiscal year 2025, Maya, that must be decided by March 2nd. A week from today is March 2nd. So this is the last week where the politicians, particularly in the lower house, need to settle on this budget. It is pandemonium right now. As we reported here last week, it looked like the Constitutional Democratic Party, Mr. Noda, the chairman of that party pulled a rabbit out of a hat and reached some sort of a concession with the LDP and Komeito to pass the budget. He accommodated the Ishin no Kai, and he also accommodated some of the demands of the Democratic Party for the people's demands. He wove it together and presented it into a compromise budget to the LDP, which seemed to have a little bit of traction. That collapsed on Tuesday, and it collapsed for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was, and I'm sorry, I'm getting into this a little bit too much in detail, but the failure of the accountant for the Seiwa Kai to show up for testimony. So that's a pretty big deal. G20 is in Johannesburg over the last week on Thursday and Friday. The foreign minister of Japan reiterated Japan's strong stance for Ukraine and Japan's commitment to support Ukraine. So there's a lot going on in the White House in Washington, D.C. with the new Trump administration with regard to Ukraine. Japan is pulling the line of what it has been doing for the last 3 years. The 3-year anniversary for the Ukraine war is this week. So Japan currently stands very firm on Ukraine, and Monday is the 3-year anniversary of that invasion. Inflation is ticking up worryingly. It is going at the highest pace since 2023. The non-fresh foods have increased 3.2% from this time last year, and the acceleration rate is shocking people in Kasumigaseki and in the Bank of Japan. Overall, there's a 4%, including fresh foods, and this has been the fastest pace in 2 decades, this inflation rate, which includes the fresh foods. I'm sure you've noticed that, or if you're living in Japan, maybe your wife has noticed it and told you about it. But vegetable prices have just skyrocketed. Cabbage in particular, which is not considered to be a very important staple of the Japanese diet, has increased so much that it has become a newsworthy item. Vegetable prices, including rice. Rice, we reported on this last week, 70%. The price has increased from last year at this point in time to this year. And this is kind of the crunch time. Rice is harvested in the summer and in the fall. And as you're going through the stockpiles, it kind of peters out and people start getting a little bit worried towards the spring where the new harvest is. So apparently there's a lot of hoarding going on, and the government is getting so worried about that it's releasing some of the stockpiles it has. And the Bank of Japan has kind of admitted that the inflation rate will remain at 3% this year. And that means that Japan has the highest inflation of all the G7 countries. I'm going to get into some of the deeper details after a small break, Maya, but I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for that, Timothy. Yes, and well, it's the first time actually today to say thank you very much to our first sponsor, Kanchu, that is kanachu.com, or you can find them at kanachu.com. And if you want to work with them, we do say that you need to connect with James at kanachu.com. James Howell is well known within the community here in Japan, the foreign community, also the Japanese community in Japan, and he represents Kanchu as a bilingual professional there. If you have any projects in mind about buying and selling real estate in Yokohama, or doing real estate investments or property management, please do not hesitate to reach out to James and connect with him. You will also find his contact details in the description of the YouTube video. And well, the only thing I can say is, yes, please work with James. Your language skills, either English or Japanese, will not be a barrier there. And Kanchu will do everything possible to meet your needs and to customize their services to your needs. Please reach out and connect with James. So, Timothy, now let's continue with the body, actually, of this episode. I know that there are quite a few details and there is a lot going on there. So the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Maya. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us. Excuse me. The biggest issue that we must talk about if you're talking about Japanese politics is the passage of the budget, which must be submitted and passed in the Diet by April 1st. So although today is February 23rd, you might think that there's a lot of time left. There isn't. The lower house has to consider and pass the budget by March 2nd so that it gives the upper house 1 month to consider it. And then once the upper house finishes their consideration of it, it becomes law. If the upper house does not consider it, does not approve it, does not has amendments or controversies about it, then it falls back to the lower house, and the lower house gets to pass it anyway. That's one of the powers of the lower house. And when people compare the lower house and the upper house, which one is stronger, which one is more wields more power, the answer is always the lower house, and the lower house is more powerful than the upper house because it's a numbers game. The lower house has almost 3 times more members than the upper house. And since it's a democracy and each vote counts, the upper house votes and the lower house votes count the same. So that comes into play when you're voting for prime minister, for example. Also, the lower house gets to, because of the larger number of members, it really gets to dictate who becomes prime minister, even though the upper house does have some sway in it. The other thing that the lower house has is that its ability to pass the budget. Its ability to pass the budget far surpasses the upper house because under the Constitution, under Japanese law, the lower house considers the budget first. It passes it to the upper house, and if the upper house doesn't approve of it, it falls back down to the lower house, and the voice of the lower house still carries. So the lower house must consider finally the budget for 2025 on March 2nd, which is next Sunday. In reality, it's unlikely for the Diet to meet on Saturday or Sunday. That means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there are potentially 5 days left before they pass the budget. They could consider something on Saturday if it comes to a crunch. Monday, as you know, is a national holiday. So realistically, there are only 4 days left this week for them to consider it, and they're not really that close. There's been so much controversy going back and forth, and it's really a nail-biting situation right now. The Budget Committee is booked on schedule for Tuesday and Wednesday, and the controversy last week arose when the Constitutional Democratic Party chairman, the chairman of the Budget Committee, who is a member of the Constitutional Democratic Party, pretty much insisted that the accountant for the Seiwakai, Mr. Abe's former faction, show up and testify. So they've already gone through a couple of negotiations there. He said he would testify if it was in closed hearings. He testified if there was no. He would testify if there is no television cameras. If it's in a secure and secluded location, not inside the Diet, he would make his testimony to the assembled. I think there are 50 members of the Budget Committee in some non-disclosed hotel. We had that pretty much on the books and ready to go last week. And in fact, the LDP said, well, we're trying to work with him. He's basically refused. He's not a member of the Diet, so he doesn't have to respond to the demands of the Budget Committee. And in any event, under our rules, the Budget Committee requires unanimous decision for somebody to testify who's not a Diet member, and we didn't decide that. You've got 26 members of the Budget Committee who did decide, and 24 who didn't. So although that's a majority, with regard to having somebody testify who is not a Diet member, the rules say it requires unanimous support, and you don't have it, so he's not going to show up. So there was back and forth on that, and it is a serious issue. The reason why it's a serious issue is because the LDP and Komeito, they are in a coalition, want to pass the budget. They want to look good to the voters of the country, and they want to begin to prepare for an election that is on the book for June 20th. The election is not June 20th. The end of the Diet session is June 20th. So it is expected that the date for the upper house election will be decided sometime between now and the end of the Diet session. There is a possibility that there will be a double election, which means that the prime minister, or either through a vote of no confidence, the lower house will close down, and all of the members, 700 plus members of the lower house, will also run an election. We just finished an election. So this would be somewhat strange. But in the last election, where the LDP lost enormously, they lost all their majority, and that's why we're in such a situation right now. The first time in 20 years, the LDP has had to deal with the opposition like this. The appearance of the accountant to describe what he did and what he was ordered. He's 77 years old. He's been the accountant for the Seiwakai, the former Abe faction, since this whole scandal began. And he was instrumental in overseeing, if not guiding it. His explanation is that somebody else was making the decisions, and everybody wants to know who specifically guided you or instructed you to make these recommendations to other members of Seiwakai. And if that comes out, then clearly those individuals who are named by the accountant, they don't stand a chance in an election. And so the opposition parties, the Constitutional Democratic Party, Isshin no Kai, and the Democratic Party for the People, those are the main ones. There are about seven other, totally in total, there are 7 opposition parties. They are licking their chops, waiting for an opportunity, because if the LDP is wounded like that, those seats become open in all of the election districts throughout the country. So that is the real prize here, and that is why we're having so much controversy. It seems like just over this last week, although the Constitutional Democratic Party seemed to be on top this time last week, now it looks like maybe Isshin no Kai is on top. They had great negotiations on Thursday. On Friday, it began to fall apart. So it wasn't quite there yet. But it did look like the LDP and Komete were becoming a little bit more chummy with Isshin no Kai. Isshin no Kai's demands for the LDP to sign on to the budget are they want essentially free education through high school. And once they got a concession there, then they began to ratchet it up and said, we'd like free food for the kids too. And anybody who has a child under the age of 2, they get free childcare as well. So as they get a concession and they see the LDP as being accommodating, they kind of ratchet it up. The Isshin no Kai is making progress there. The Democratic Party for the People, they have different issues. They want the tax-free salary to increase from 1,300,000 yen per year, which is about, that's maybe $6,800 per year as a salary. Anything below that is not taxed. And the position of, can you turn your mic off, please, Maya?
Yes.
The position of the Democratic Party for the People is we want that number raised to 1.78, 1,780,000 yen per year. It doesn't sound like a lot, but apparently a lot of people in Japan are below that, or maybe it's a 2-income family and the wife is earning that. So they're continuing to demand that. The impact on the national budget comparatively for Isshin no Kai and the Democratic Party for the People's demands, Isshin no Kai's is cheaper to achieve than having the tax-free salaries. So although the Democratic Party for the People, they are a smaller number, but it seemed like they were more in line with the LDP when this process first began. It now seems that they've dug their heels in so much that they've irritated the LDP that the LDP is really looking for any other place to go rather than them. Isshin no Kai has noticed that they have an opportunity here, so they're pushing the envelope as well. The proposal coming from the Constitutional Democratic Party last week wove in those 2 demands, didn't quite meet them enough, but enough to calm them down and to at least allow them to say to their voters and to their constituents, we achieved some success. Please vote for us and we'll do even better in the next election. So that's what's up for grabs right now. And there are precious few days left to achieve that. So we go back into work on Tuesday. Tuesday and Wednesday, our diet sessions are already packed up. The only time that the accountant could potentially show up is on Thursday. And the budget committee chairman, I don't know how, if he's going to continue to insist on it. We're not going to move. We're not going to vote on the budget until we hear from the accountant. I don't know if he's going to stick with that. If he sticks with that and they don't pass the budget by Friday, which is a possibility, then the Constitutional Democratic Party will be blamed for not passing the budget. We'll move into next week without having passed the budget. They'll have some sort of stopgap budget. And then the LDP, who has a slight advantage in defining what public perceptions are with their ability to influence the press, would lambaste the Constitutional Democratic Party for being irresponsible and not passing the budget. So similarly, the Ishin and the Democratic Party for the People can also be blamed for holding too firm and forcing the bill not to be passed. So that is what's happening this week. In light of that, we've got all sorts of things going on in the United States with President Trump, with the tariffs, with steel and aluminum, with Ukraine, with Gaza. There's a lot going on there that really impacts Japan too. Japan is tightly integrated with America's foreign policy. They have been for a long time. They essentially need to be in lockstep with the United States, and you saw that very clearly with Joe Biden and the prime ministers that we've had, including Mr. Ishiba, Mr. Suga, Mr. Kishida. So now with the change in the policy, it is a bit of a catch-up time. They don't know which way to go, but as we saw from Mr. Iwaya in Johannesburg, Japan still supports Ukraine. So there's a little bit of a gap there. In light of the threatened tariffs, the aluminum and steel, 25% on pharmaceuticals and computers, that sort of thing, to kick in on April 2nd, I believe, exports have surged just over the last couple of days. So 7.2% surge in exports, mostly calibrated in cars and ships, strangely enough. But you would think cars and ships takes a while to produce, so maybe those sales activities have been in play for many, many months. But the sales have been concluded in a very remarkable fashion. So they're trying to move product out. Similarly, imports surged 16.7%. So they're trying to purchase things before reciprocal tariffs come in. The imports have been predominantly on communications machinery and computers. And with regard to where these exports and imports are coming from, exports to the United States were up 8.1%. To China, they were down 6.2%. To Europe, they were down 15.1%. So when overall exports surged 7.2%, and the United States is the United States increase was 8.1%, while China was down 6% and Europe were down 15%. It tells you the enormity of the trade between the United States and Japan in terms of exports. Let me see. Yes, April 2nd is the amount of Trump tariffs on 25%. So the foreign ministry, the finance ministry are really busy negotiating with Trump and the Trump administration. Can we have a little bit of a relaxation here? Can we do anything else? This 25%, it's really enormous. It's going to impact our costs. It's going to impact our economy. And as I was talking about, the inflation rate here is just really surging. The Bank of Japan has acknowledged that 3% will stay for the rest of this year. And just what's going on with the price of vegetables and rice, it's enough to scare anybody. In conclusion, about with today's briefing, the real thing that you need to watch is the possibility of a double election on announced around June 20th. So this diet session, when the budget passes, and I'm pretty sure it will pass maybe on Saturday, there'll be a little bit more controversy going on there, but the budget will more likely than not pass. Then we get into other legislation, for example, dual surnames for married couples. That legislation is very much heating up, but there's a lot. There's the cyber defense legislation. There's a lot of legislation that needs to be considered after the budget is passed and before the end of the session on June 20th. And then we get into the constitutionally mandated upper house election. So all 252 members of the upper house will go, one half of the upper house will go for election. So that's not so enormous, but it is a national election. And the possibility of having a double election, I think it just continues to rise and rise. Expo begins in less than 2 months, and that's a big deal for Osaka and for Isshin no Kai. In fact, it was a topic of conversation when Mr. Ishiba visited with Donald Trump. Why don't you come visit the expo, Mr. President? And he said, yeah, that would be a good idea. I think I might want to do that. So that's a possibility. And I think that was an olive branch that was handed to Isshin by the prime minister. He didn't need to say that, but it is a big deal for Isshin. It's a pretty big deal for Japan too. It's going to bring several million more foreign visitors to Japan over the 6-month exposition. So that's something to watch too. But the big deal here is the possibility of a double election. That's what we're going to be focused on over the next couple of months. We'll be talking about it at great length. And if it does come up, it is a rare chance for the opposition to really come in strong, especially depending on what the accountant for the Seiwakai has to say if he ever does testify. I think he probably can't escape that. Anyway, that's it for the hot topic items on the agenda, Maya. We can go into the Q&A where actually that's where more of the heat and light is produced here. So back to you, Maya.
Okay, thank you very much, Timothy. Before we go into the Q&A, we have accumulated quite a few questions already. But yes, I know. Please stay there. Don't run away. I cannot answer all the questions on my own. So before that, though, I want to say a big thank you to our other sponsor, Houze, or Houze Inc, as they are known as well. So Houze Inc is also based in Yokohama, and they do custom home design and construction. They do also commercial building construction. So if you have any projects in mind in these fields, please reach out to them. You will see this their email address on screen. It will be also shown on screen once again at the end of this podcast, and you can once again update, let's say, sorry, I'm totally lost now. Okay. No, yes, the contact details of Houze. And once again, there you can use either English or Japanese to communicate with them. You will probably be communicating with Hano Roshizawa Howell, who is there in English or in Japanese as well. So please do not hesitate and reach out to them. You are not going to regret it because their services will be customized to your needs. And Timothy, now we move on to the Q&A session. So let's see how the questions, let's go through the questions we've got this morning. The first one comes from, it's not a question actually. It is it is an invitation for a meeting from Cam.
Hi, Cam.
Good morning and thank you very much. So Cam says, let's meet when I'm in Tokyo next month. Yes, that will be a pleasure. So thanks a lot for this, letting us know that you will be here, and let's keep in touch. And from Hiroko-san, first we've got this question. During the summit meeting in Washington, D.C., the two leaders agreed to expand Japan's import of liquefied natural gas. From the United States. But since 37% of the LNG is resold overseas, expanding imports from the US will not continue to Japan energy security, or will not contribute to Japan's energy security. What are your comments on this, Timothy?
Okay, I think this is more related to Russia. So Gazprom is in Sakhalin. They have two LNG uh, manufacturing um, facilities there. The Japanese are actually invested in both of them, and as a consequence of its investment, receives LNG from the production. And I think the reason why the United States is so keen on getting LNG between Japan and the United States is, number one, the revenue and the fact that the United States overproduces it, but also just to kind of reduce their reliance on what's being produced closer at hand with the Russians. So I think that's mostly it. But you're absolutely right that LNG is a major component of the energy distribution of Japan. Nuclear is actually starting to come back on strong, but LNG is also a important component. Wind, they've just had a wind conference this last week, I think in Makuhari. So wind and renewable energy resources are also a big mix. But with regard to LNG, I think the discussion with the president was mostly, buy more of our stuff, whatever it is, cars, computers, LNG. You don't need it, but go ahead and buy it anyway, because we are providing you with an umbrella, and you don't have to spend that much money on your own defenses because we're producing it. So everyone for themselves. The United States is about America first, so you need to begin to pay more of your share of your own defense. I think that's probably more of it. Maybe Cam has something to add if he's on the channel.
Yes, Cam, if you have more insights, please do share them with us. And another question, this time from Cam in Clubhouse, is: do Japanese companies see Trump as bad for business?
So the court is out on that. We're not quite sure. There is a big delegation, including Kei Dan-ren, in China now for a 10-day visit. A lot of Japanese leaders are in China. This is good news, actually. The distance between Japan and China has been very stark over the last couple of years. It needs to be closer. I think making Japan and China a little bit more friendly benefits everybody. And so this trade delegation, I think it's more than 100 people for 10 days in China. They've met with the premier. They're doing all sorts of things. Is a very good thing. We don't know about Trump, the 25% tariffs on many products. So I think people are waiting. In fact, business is a little bit just kind of holding course to see what's going to happen. But this surge in imports and the surge in exports tells you that there is trepidation in dealing with the Trump administration. So I think we just need to wait. I mean, it's happened so quickly. Everybody admits that over the last, he's been president for a month, and look at what has happened globally as well as bilaterally. So I think the court is still out on that. I can't make a comment one way or the other. I'm very hopeful that it will be good for the United States and good for Japan. The ambassador has something to do with that, but we're not sure when Mr. Glass will be going through Senate confirmations. So that's still it's an open question.
Right, because every kind of disruption in Japan, in business in Japan, is not endorsed very willingly, right? And we know that there will be disruptions, because of not only tariffs, of course, but other policies, external policies of the United States. So, yes, Tim, as you said, we're going to wait and see. But I think that whatever happens, the Japanese companies are going to adjust.
Oh, there was.
They will adjust, and I don't think that the impact will be long lasting. So probably there will be impact, of course, but the adjustment, some companies will adjust faster, other will do that a little bit slower, but at the end of the day, they will. So, thank you for that, for the comments. Yes, and also, there is a question here on LinkedIn from Manabe-san. So the question is: what impact will the Hyogo Prefecture scandal have on the Ishin party?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So to bring everybody up to date on that, so the Hyogo prefecture, the governor was criticized because he was a little bit tough. He was a new governor. The former governor resigned. He had been governor 3 terms. So everybody was comfortable with him. He came in out of the blue. He became governor. People didn't like the new way he was doing things. He was shaking things up. There was 2 suicides under his watch, and he was blamed because he was so tough and he was harassing people, and a vote of no confidence was given to him. He was kicked out of office. He ran again. He didn't accept it. He ran again. He won. He became governor again. And now there's a new controversy that he used funds for social media advertising. Manabe-san, if that's a correct encapsulation, please correct me where I'm wrong. But that's the deal right now. And so there is another issue with him. Should we kick him out because he's now under investigation? I think it's the same thing with Trump. It's the same thing with a lot of other democracies. There's somebody that's in office that you don't like, and you just constantly attack them and beat them down and try and besmirch them. It's happening alarmingly all over the place, and it's pretty much the same pattern. I don't know how it's going to impact it, but this is a controversy. It makes other things just more contentious than they normally should be in a polite, democracy. But the controversy between those who dislike the new governor and those who support him, it's huge. The people are very, very passionate about it. And it has revealed how social media is really going to impact elections going forward. We saw that with the governor of Tokyo election, and we saw that with the Hyogo prefecture when he came back and was governor again, and now that's one of the areas where he's being attacked. So since Ishin supported him, he was an Ishin candidate, and he is the first governor outside of Osaka to be elected governor under the Ishin brand. It was a huge victory for Ishin, and the fact that now he's being tainted, yes, it does have an impact on tainting Ishin as well. So how it ends up, does he survive this? Does he continue being governor? Is the expo in Osaka going to be a success? All of these things come together, and we culminate around the time of the potential double election. So there's a lot going on there, and a lot of the things that we're talking about and hearing about, they all have an accumulative effect on the possibility of a double election. The double election is important because the last election of the lower house, the LDP lost its majority, and the opposition parties want to continue that trend. And I think that all things continuing in a kind of pace that they're at now, it is likely that should there be a double election, the LDP will be further wounded.
Right, and we have a comment by Hiroaki on YouTube here. He says, Expo isn't challenged by any parties like being shut down or scaled down, although the economy has been impacted by the Expo preparations. And so far, no parties have challenged Ukraine supports and US-Japan relationship. So I think that it's partially related to, well, the governor of Hyogo prefecture. And yeah, but these are still internal politics, external politics as well. And I think that in terms of, challenging Ukraine supports and US-Japan relations, probably companies are not going to oppose any of those, because for business, it is important to see that there are business projects there. And if they see that, I don't think that there will be any opposition at all. So, yes, Timothy.
Yeah, well, also, everybody on the channel is there. You're already Japan hands. You're already experts. You already know how Japan has built up in the Roaring 20s when Japan was in its bubble heyday and things like that. So Japanese companies pretty much follow what the ministries ask them to do, and they contribute. They don't hold back that much. They want to be in good favor with the Japanese government. So if the Japanese government, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Prime Minister say, we should hold a position this way on Ukraine or that way, typically the companies toe the line. So you're absolutely right, Maya. There's probably little that the companies are going to do. Is if it's good for business, if the Japanese government has decided that, there is strength in numbers and there is strength in unity, and that's typically how Japan operates and how it projects its own foreign power.
Right. And we have a comment from Cam again in Clubhouse saying, it's incredible to see how the old guard is still holding on in Japan, especially
Yep.
when it comes to building relationships with Trump people and their resistance thereof.
Yes, welcome to the party, Cam.
And then, well, it is especially from a public affairs standpoint. Yes, very much so indeed. Well, yes, go ahead, Timothy.
Briefly, Maya. Cam, I think there are a lot of people that feel like that. Like, gosh, it's just the same old guys. It's the same faces. We see them all the time. There is a transition going on, though. It's subtle, but I think for those of us who watch it carefully, it is noticeable. The younger guys are coming up. The fact that Mr. Azumi is the chairman of the budget committee, he is a brilliant guy, and he qualifies as, I mean, he's got gray hair, but he qualifies as the younger part of it. You've got some other younger people coming up, and I think how the budget committee shakes out, the people that were involved in that will be waving their own flags, and their elevation into public policy will rise as a consequence. And I think come the end of this diet session on June 20th and an election, either just the upper house election or the double election, I think new leaders will emerge as a consequence of that. So it's something to look forward to.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. And then, of course, we know that, well, fresh blood is coming, but the change in Japan usually requires generations, to change. So that, well, it's incremental, it is slow, but it's coming. Okay. So
the other thing too, Maya, is what we were talking about, what Manabe was talking about. Social media and the impact of social media and the young people voting and being engaged and wanting to participate, because there's a vehicle for them to do that now. They don't have to listen to grandma and daddy talk about it over the kitchen table. They have their own avenues, and some of them are compelled to be a little bit more engaged in it. So with that, you can expect more dramatic change.
yes, very much so. Even though it's interesting to note though that some of the very prominent figures in the LDP, they have been also very active on social media. I'm talking about Kono Taro and also Mr. Suga. Surprisingly, he's got a lot of followers on X. I think that Mr. Ishiba as well. So, not Ishiba, Kishida. Forgive me for this mix-up. But Mr. Kishida is very active on X as well. So, we see that the gradual shift, and it starts also to impact the results of the election. So, as you said, it's really fascinating to watch, and we are in for something more exciting. Okay, and then Timothy, so there is a question here about Miss Abe. Okay, so that is the widow, the wife of late Mr. Abe. So she met with President Trump in December, right? He was president-elect back then. Now he's president. So she played a very important diplomatic role there. So she warmed up, or she created the path for the meeting between Mr. Trump and Mr. Obama. And well, this past week she was also in Taiwan, talking with the president of Taiwan. And a couple of months ago, when there was a question once again by one of our audiences here, whether she was going to take a more active part in Japanese politics, we actually said probably no, she wouldn't. But now we see that gradually she's acting, as a diplomat, probably a representative of the LDP, and she's usually sent, or she meets people who are kind of, difficult to meet straight away officially because of let's say, geopolitical relations and sensitivities in the region as well. What is your take on this? Are we going to see her become even more active, or is this something just that happens on a base to, let's say, project to project, or on what's that, or project base?
So Maya, this question came up last week too, and then it came up like a couple of sessions ago. Is
Yeah.
this from the same individual?
No, it's from a different individual.
Okay. So it is said that Miss Abe did have something to do with Mr. Ishiba meeting with President Trump. I'm not so sure if that, maybe it's not even Tabasco being added, because I don't think it had that much power. He was going to meet with Mr. Ishiba in any event. The fact that she went and had dinner with the Trumps as president-elect, and Mr. Ishiba didn't. Mr. Ishiba physically just couldn't. It was not. Yeah, and I think maybe the appetite by Mr. Trump to meet with him was not very high. But he was the second leader to be met by Mr. Trump when he took office as president. He met with Benjamin Netanyahu on a Monday, and then he met with Mr. Ishiba on a Friday. So that was just 2 weeks ago. So that's somewhat significant. Debbie Sukarno, do you remember Debbie? She's on TV quite a bit. She was one of the wives of President Sukarno. Do you know who I'm talking about, Maya?
I know the name. I'm not familiar with the person, well, and what they do, basically. So.
Okay. Well, she's a celebrity, and she just announced that she's going to be running in the upper house election coming up. Okay.
Oh,
so
you're talking. Yes. Now I remember.
Yeah.
She is on TV variety programs, and she's the wife of a former minister or president of the Philippines.
Sukarno, not of the Philippines, of
Thailand.
No, it's not Thailand. Maybe Malaysia.
Oh,
But
Malaysia,
anyway,
yes, or Indonesia. Okay,
Indonesia.
right. Yes, I remember now. Sorry, it didn't just come.
So
up.
she was wife
Right.
number 6, 7. They can have several wives there, and she was, I think, wife number 6 or
Come
7.
on.
Yeah, it's true. And he died, and she came back to Japan. She's, I think she was naturalized as a Japanese citizen. And she's announced that she's going to run. She's putting together a formal position paper to do that. Compared to Abe, Akie Abe, I don't know if her running for the upper house makes any sense. It might give the LDP one more vote, one more voice, but it's in the upper house. It's not in the lower house. And I think if I was her, I've got enough position, I've got enough prestige and power. I can have a meeting with anybody. I could go to meet the Pope if I wanted to. I don't need to be embroiled in the Japanese politics to enhance that. So I don't know if it really makes that much sense if I were her. She has enough prestige and power, but I think it is somewhat limited. She wasn't Mr. Abe. She was the wife of Mr. Abe. She has her own baggage. But I think she's just fine the way she is right now. And I don't think making any other political moves would enhance it. But I could be wrong.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think that we'll be talking about this again, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks or a month. Okay, so great. And we've got, comments from Hiroaki about Mr. Ishiba and the budget for fiscal year 2025. So Hiroaki says, Ishiba takes portions of proposals of all parties concerned, and he takes them to pass the budget plan accordingly and steadily, smoothly. So it seems that he has been very diplomatic, and he has been playing the game quite well. Something that very few people, I think, expected of him, because he has been known for being openly critical of the previous prime ministers and, not only the prime ministers, but their cabinets as well. So I think that once again we are witnessing something interesting here, the same or a similar thing we witnessed with Mr. Kishida. How everybody expected Mr. Kishida to disappear as prime minister quite soon after he was elected, and he held on for 4 years. So, what do you think about Mr. Ishiba now? Because you mentioned that there is a possibility of a double election, which, of course, you know, puts what's that? What do you say in English? It's still difficult for me, but yes, which creates that risk for him and his cabinet,
Yeah.
to not be there anymore.
So Hiroaki is a very astute observer of Japanese politics. He's been in our group since the beginning, Maya. For
Yes.
4 years, Hiroaki has been participating and providing us with great insight and really good questions. I think if we asked Mr. Ishiba to stick his tongue out, all we would see is bite marks. And biting your tongue, that means doing something that you really prefer not to do, but you have to do because it's expedient. So the prime minister is forced to have this kind of diplomatic. He's not like that. He is very, he's arrogant. He's pushy. He thinks everybody else is an idiot compared to him. So this is kind of out of character for him. But yes, I agree with Hiroaki that he is playing that role. He's trying to be that mediator and the conciliator for making deals. But he's got a tough. It's just very tough. He must pass the budget. He's lacking 13 votes. How does he get that? The opposition party smells blood. None of them want to cooperate with each other. There are three potentials. There's the Constitutional Democratic Party with more than 100 members. There's the Ishin no Kai with 38 members, and there's a Democratic Party for the People with 28 members. He needs 13. So how can I make friends with any one of those groups that don't want to talk to each other? They don't want to make a joint coalition. That was the idea of the Constitutional Democratic Party. Guys, let's join forces and then kick their asses, and then we take over power. Let's wait for that election, and then we come in. And they couldn't do that. And so now it's every man for himself. Ishin no Kai and the Constitution, they're just fighting among each other. And Mr. Ishiba is trying to figure out, okay, I'll do that. Will you give me your votes? 13 votes. Yeah, we will, but we want this too. And on the other side of the room, he's talking with the other guys. So that's all going on in tandem. It is a very difficult job. He's just praying for 13 votes so he can pass the budget and then move on to the other issues. Everybody's worried that the LDP and Komeito, and I don't want to get into it, but Komeito and LDP they're not on really solid ground. They're a little bit on rocky ground. But with the LDP and the opposition parties, everybody's worried you're not going to keep your promise. We're going to give you the votes, you're going to pass the budget, and then you're going to change your mind. You've done that in the past. So we don't trust you. We're not sure. And the LDP is saying, look, if we concede and we give you these, why don't you just join us and become part of the LDP Komeito coalition? We'll give you a cabinet seat. And nobody's taking that. And the reason why nobody's taking that is because when the election comes, they want to kick their butts. And they don't want to be affiliated with the LDP. Even Komeito is thinking, our affiliation with the LDP, we're the clean government party. And it's kind of icky how much money those guys were taking and they didn't report it. So it is a very, very delicious mix. And the prime minister, yes, I think he's, like you said, he's doing an admirable job. But the fat lady hasn't sung yet. Come this time next Sunday, we're going to know one way or the other. So for those of you in the audience, please, join us next Sunday because there's going to be a lot to report about.
Right. Okay. And there is another comment in Clubhouse from Hiroko-san about the energy mix in LNG. Hiroko-san, I don't know the implications of that, but maybe you can help us with that. I'll read the comment out anyway. So Hiroko-san says, thank you for your insights on LNG import issues, but I just learned that according to the policies of Japan's major non-life insurance companies, the Alaska LNG project in the Arctic is excluded from insurance underwriting. So I'm not sure about the implications of this really. And Hiroko-san, if you can help us, please do. Timothy, I'm not sure whether you can comment on this as well, because being excluded from insurance underwriting, yeah, there are quite a few things there, and the reasons for, for this exclusion could be very different as well.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. That's out of my scope. I'm not even sure
Mhm.
what the insurance
Right.
are.
Yeah, I am not either. But well, with this, if we cannot get an answer this morning from Hiroko-san, then probably we can comment on this next week.
Uh,
Timothy, with this, we have run through the questions and also, I think, through the answers. Stay on board. We still have a bit. Yes, okay, a bit, a few more minutes. Yes, so Debbie, was that Debbie-san, who is going to run for in the upper house election. So she's from Indonesia. Thank you very much, Ponjo Tora. Yes, that's on YouTube. Thank you for the help. Yeah. Okay, great. With this, Timothy, once again, big thanks to you for preparing for this briefing and for staying on board, not falling out. Okay. All right. So Hiroko-san says, yes, since Alaska, the project is excluded from insurance underwriting, the project from Alaska cannot be realized. Well, thank you very much for that. So, which means that once again, Japan needs to rely on other sources solely, probably, yeah, maybe predominantly Russian sources, but we need to look into that later. Okay, thanks a lot for this. Yes, no insurance coverage, no import. Yeah, I see. Thanks a lot for this, Hiroko-san, and for helping us with more facts and information during the briefing. Well, Timothy, I know that the weather there is nice. I can hear some wind. So I guess that there is a lot of wind there. I don't have any idea whether the day is good for sailing or not, but I'm
There's
sure that.
and here's the mountain that's behind the harbor, and it is just packed full of these huge Seahawks. Seahawks.
Seahawks. Yeah,
Seahawks. You can see them flying in the background because there's so
mhm,
many of them.
right.
But yeah, that's what you're hearing. The cawing of the Seahawks as they fly by. They're paying attention to the briefing as well.
Yes, they are definitely so. All right. So, to all of you who stayed with us and listened to us, watched us, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy today, enjoy tomorrow, because tomorrow is also a national holiday. Happy Emperor's birthday, and we'll see you again next week on Sunday at 8:20. And now here is a shout out once again. A great big thank you to our sponsors, that is Kanchu and Houze. Thanks a lot. We'll see you.